You need to get that animal off the street before it hurts someone. That's how it all began. My neighbor, Cheryl, was standing at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed tight, lips twisted as if she'd just bitten into something sour. Beside me sat Max, my golden retriever, my best friend, and the goofiest ball of sunshine you'd ever meet. He tilted his head at her words, ears perked with innocent confusion. Max wasn't a threat. He was the kind of dog who'd nudge a toy toward your feet just to see you smile. But to Cheryl, he wasn't a loyal companion. He was apparently a menace. She'd only been in the neighborhood 6 months, and already she had managed to wedge herself into everyone's business. She screamed about kids biking too fast, scolded neighbors for leaving trash bins out a few minutes late, and even pushed the HOA to make someone repaint their shutters when there was nothing wrong with them. Cheryl thrived on control, and now Max was just her latest target. She claimed he had lunged at her while she was walking past my yard. The truth? Max had been on a leash, safely behind the fence, far more interested in a butterfly fluttering by than in Cheryl. But reality didn't matter to her. By the very next morning, she had filed a formal complaint with animal control. At first, I dismissed it as another one of her over-the-top tantrums. But then the letter came in the mail. There was going to be a hearing about my supposedly dangerous dog. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just drama anymore. If Cheryl won, Max could be declared vicious. They could take him away from me, or worse. That night, I sat on the porch, Max's head heavy on my lap. His breathing was slow, steady, full of the kind of peace Cheryl could never understand. I promised him right then and there I wasn't going to let her win. The very next morning, I started building my defense. I gathered videos of Max joyfully playing with kids from the neighborhood, statements from friends who'd known him for years, and even vet records showing he had aced every temperament test. But Cheryl wasn't letting up. In fact, she was doubling down. She was going door to door, telling anyone who would listen that Max was a ticking time bomb. It was no longer just a petty feud, it was a war. My loyalty to Max against Cheryl's obsession with control. And I had no clue how far she was willing to go to destroy us. The week before the hearing, I noticed something disturbing. Every time Max and I stepped outside, Cheryl was there, perched on her porch, phone in hand, eyes sharp like a hawk. She wasn't just complaining anymore. She was gathering ammunition. One evening, while Max sniffed around the yard, Cheryl's shrill voice cut through the air. "There it is!" Proof he's aggressive. I spun around. She was holding her phone high, filming Max as he barked at a squirrel scampering across the grass. She narrated in this theatrical tone, like she was a reporter breaking news. "The dog is out of control," she announced, zooming in on his wagging tail and harmless barks. I wanted to laugh at the ridiculousness of it all, but I couldn't. I knew her tactics could work. If someone saw only her videos without context, it might look like Max was wild. She was fabricating a story piece by piece, a false reality that could cost me my dog. That night, I called my friend Laura, a paralegal who had dealt with cases like this before. After I explained everything, she didn't even hesitate. "Start documenting everything. Dates, times, witnesses. And if she's recording you record her too." So that's what I did. I set up security cameras around the yard, not just for Max, but for my own protection. And within days, those cameras captured something I couldn't have imagined. At 6:13 a.m., Cheryl walked her tiny Yorkie past my house. She stopped, glanced around, and then deliberately let her dog run up to my fence. The Yorkie yapped furiously at Max, and what did Max do? He sat still, tail wagging nervously, unsure of what to make of the little intruder. Cheryl, assuming my camera wasn't watching, suddenly yanked backward and screamed, "It's attacking us!" Max hadn't moved an inch. When I reviewed the footage later, my jaw dropped. She wasn't twisting reality anymore. She was staging attacks, but the real punch came 2 days later. Cheryl stormed up to my property, slapped a paper against my mailbox, and smirked. "Consider yourself warned." It was a notice that she had filed a restraining order against Max. Yes, against my dog. That was the moment I realized Cheryl wasn't just petty. She was dangerous. And if I didn't fight with every shred of evidence I had, she just might succeed in taking Max away forever. The hearing date loomed, fast approaching. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and paper, the kind of place where everything could change in a single afternoon. I walked inside, Max's leash clenched in one hand. Though he wasn't allowed in, his absence heavy as a stone. On the other hand was a thick folder, packed with evidence. My chest tightened as I scanned the room. Cheryl was already there, seated neatly, smug smile plastered across her face, as though the verdict was already written. Then the judge entered, and silence fell. Cheryl didn't waste a second. The moment the hearing began, she launched into her performance. Her voice quivered just enough to sound convincing. "Your Honor," she began, clutching a tissue dramatically, "this dog lunged at me. Its jaws snapped inches from my leg. I've lived in fear every single day since." She dabbed at invisible tears, playing the victim with expert flair. Then came her videos. She played clips of Max barking at squirrels, tugging lightly on his leash, even leaping with joy when I came home from work. Taken out of context, it looked chaotic. Cheryl spun her narrative with precision, painting herself as a helpless woman trapped in a neighborhood with a beast. When it was finally my turn, I drew in a deep breath and slid my folder of evidence across to the judge. "With all due respect, Your Honor," I said firmly, "this isn't the story of a dangerous animal. This is the story of a neighbor determined to twist the truth." The judge leaned forward as I queued up my own footage. The room watched as Cheryl's Yorkie darted up to my fence, barking furiously. Max stayed seated, tail wagging, not even raising his voice. Then came Cheryl's shrill scream, so clearly staged that even the court clerk tried to hide a laugh. I followed up with testimony letters from neighbors. One described how Max spent hours playing fetch with their toddlers. Another wrote about the time Max stayed faithfully by an elderly man's side after he fell until help arrived. These weren't the stories of a menace. They were the stories of a gentle companion. Finally, I presented Max's veterinary records, temperament evaluations, training certificates, and even a glowing note from his obedience school praising his exceptionally calm nature. With each piece of evidence, Cheryl's confidence wilted. The smug grin slipped away, replaced with restless fidgeting and eyes darting nervously around the courtroom. The judge fixed his gaze on her. "Miss Peterson," he said sternly, "fabricating incidents is a serious matter. This court does not tolerate false claims." My heart pounded. For the first time, I felt the tide turning. The gavel struck once, sharp and commanding. The atmosphere shifted, thick with anticipation. "This court finds insufficient evidence to support the claim that Max is a dangerous animal," the judge declared. "In fact, the evidence demonstrates deliberate attempts to mislead this court." His eyes cut toward Cheryl, who stiffened in her seat. "Miss Peterson," he continued, "your actions wasted judicial resources and inflicted unnecessary distress on your neighbor. You will be held accountable." A rush of relief surged through me. Max was safe, but the judge wasn't finished. As a consequence of filing false claims and attempting to deceive this court, you are ordered to pay restitution of $7,500 to cover legal fees and damages. The gasp that escaped Cheryl's lips echoed in the hushed courtroom. She opened her mouth to argue, but the judge silenced her with a raised hand. "This matter is settled. Any further harassment toward your neighbor or his dog will result in additional penalties." For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile tugged at my lips. Justice had not only protected Max, it had struck back. When I walked out of the courthouse, Laura was waiting with a proud grin. She clapped me on the shoulder. "Told you the truth would win," she said. I exhaled, feeling the heavy weight I'd carried finally lift. Back home, Max greeted me at the door with his usual goofy wag, oblivious to the storm that had nearly torn him away. I knelt down, buried my face in his fur, and whispered, "We did it, buddy. You're safe." His tongue slopped across my cheek, as if to say he never doubted me for a second. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. For once, Cheryl wasn't the loudest voice on the street. Neighbors shook my hand. Kids ran up to pet Max. Even the HOA president muttered about keeping a closer eye on false reports from now on. As for Cheryl, red-faced and defeated, she kept her distance. In the end, this fight wasn't just about money or reputation. It was about standing up for the truth, even when someone tried to bury it under lies. Cheryl had underestimated me. And more importantly, she had underestimated Max, because sometimes justice doesn't just protect the innocent. It bites back at the entitled and makes them pay dearly for their cruelty. Thanks for sticking with me until the end of this wild ride. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and of course, subscribe so you don't miss the next unbelievable neighbor drama. Your support really helps this channel grow.